My name is Leah Keene, and as president of Harvard GlobalWE, I am privileged to represent this shared interest group of the Harvard Alumni Association. We are dedicated to the empowerment of women through education, dialogue, and connection among individuals and organizations working for women's rights and freedoms worldwide. We highlight and raise awareness about issues concerning women's empowerment globally, excuse me, including but not limited to education, political rights, freedom from violence, women's health, and economic empowerment. Our board of directors is as global as our interests, with representatives in the US, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, and our members are similarly distributed all over the globe. I'm so happy to have all of you join us here for our first Harvard Global We Movie Club Plus. It's an enhanced format of our traditional movie club where we have the opportunity to ask questions and to chat with a member of the creative crew of the film. And I'm delighted that today we have the director of Below the Belt, Shannon Cohn, joining us for an interview. This is a 10-year anniversary special event, and we hope to bring more such events to you this coming year to discuss shared understandings of movies focused on women and our empowerment. Before we start, we'd like to take a screenshot for social media. So if you're okay with that, please turn your camera on.
Okay.
And RT will take the screenshot.
I'm just going to wait 10 seconds for everyone to turn the cameras on.
And then,
All right. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
all right. I hope everybody enjoyed watching Below the Belt. If you haven't yet, I think it's going to be available for another 24 hours at the link that we sent out. We will have a question and answer session after our board member and moderator, Aliza Makbul, interviews Shannon. And if we have time, we'd like to have breakout discussion rooms as we usually do in our movie clubs. Aliza is our marketing chair who joined us as a volunteer in the marketing team a few years ago. And just like her, you two could join us and moderate a movie or choose another project to work on with us here at GlobalWE. Aliza, take it away.
Very good morning to everyone joining us in the US, and hello to everybody joining us from all over the world. I am so excited today that Shannon is here with us and to talk about her incredible and critically acclaimed film, Below the Belts. Such a treat. Thank you so much, Shannon, for being here with us today.
Of course.
I just want to tell everybody that once I start my question answer with Shannon, if there are questions that you want to ask as they come up in your mind, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and I will then go back to those questions and present them to Shannon for you. Shannon, I know everyone's eager to hear from you, so I will jump right in to my first question. You were diagnosed with endometriosis when you were only 16, and therefore know firsthand the pain and the agony of the disease, but also the added challenge of finding the right diagnosis and care. And we know that women, especially women of color, are often dismissed when they tell their doctor they are in pain or experiencing symptoms. Can you talk about the importance of elevating the awareness and education around this?
Yes. Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Aliza. And hello to everyone. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here to talk with all of you this morning, this afternoon, this evening. Well, actually, I first had symptoms at 16, but I wasn't actually diagnosed until I was 29. So 13 years of having symptoms, really a wide variety, wide array of symptoms, from GI symptoms, migraines, chronic fatigue, a lot of symptoms that maybe one doesn't typically associate with, this condition. A lot of people are under the mistaken belief that maybe it's just pelvic pain or, painful periods, that those are symptoms, absolutely, but by no means are they the only symptoms. Actually, several people, and I'm trying to remember, I've been in Davos for the past week, and I literally just got back last night or yesterday. So my brain is a little bit slow, but we can get into, because I worked a lot with the WEF the past week, and we announced a new, a new study about the gender health gap. So I would love to get in with all of that with you in a moment, but I'm a little bit delayed in all of my cognitive thinking. But anyway, at the moment. But anyway, what I was saying is a large percentage, I think it's more than 80% of people actually present with gastrointestinal symptoms first. So bloating, constipation, diarrhea, things like that, that no one would ever associate with endometriosis, not even specialists. So I always like to say that because there's always somebody, you know, in a discussion like this who, without fail, who has maybe GI symptoms and they've never associated that they could be, you know, associated with endometriosis. So I just always make a point to say that. But to your point, yes, the average delay to diagnosis is 10 years. It is, research shows that it is inordinately longer for people of color, women of color, who usually go longer, and not only for diagnosis, but to receive effective treatment. And that's certainly the case across the board. Why is that? Endometriosis is really a perfect, awful storm of so many things. The menstrual taboo and stigma that permeates cultures around the world to varying extents, but even still here in the, you know, the global north and the Western hemisphere, like it still runs rampant, you know, we still are confronted with it. And then we get into other cultures in the global south and in the East and the Middle East, for example. We just did an event in Dubai, and maybe you guys can speak to that, where I learned that a lot of girls won't even tell their same-sex family members when they have symptoms. So we're dealing with a huge, you know, barriers to care with when you don't even communicate, you know, the symptoms to same-sex family members. And then beyond that, we get into things like gender bias in medicine, racial bias in medicine, informed consent. What does that mean? Barriers to care, institutional barriers, financial barriers to care. So all of these things go into this long delay to diagnosis. It's not just one thing. And really, endometriosis is a lens through which we can look at all of this. But when people ask me what the film is about, I actually usually don't say it's about a film about endometriosis. I say it's about a film about health inequities told through the lens of a condition that affects 200 million people on the planet.
And you did such a great job in the film, just putting across that message, like visually also, because when I was watching, I physiologically could feel the pain of those women. It made me really emotional to see them go through that suffering. And I want to know, as a patient also, like how much of a difference would it have made for you if the providers were able to quickly recognize your symptoms and direct you to the right treatment? Because the suffering that comes with this disease and the loss of the quality of life and the number of work hours and everything related to it, like how much of a difference would it have made for you as a patient? Sure.
I mean, I think that most people would say, anyone would say, you know, it would make an enormous difference. Of course, for me personally, it would have made a difference. First of all, as a teenager, when you know you have symptoms and you are communicating them to your family members, which I told my grandmother, you know, that this was happening, and she said, "Oh, well, you know, women in our family have always had those types of symptoms. You know, that's just part of having your period." And so already there's this, we're confronting this culture and this cycle of menstrual misinformation, you know, that has just been kind of perpetuated over generations. Obviously, my grandmother loved me. I mean, she did love me and care for me and wanted me to not be in pain, but she was, of course, operating from this standpoint of being misinformed, you know, and having gone through this herself, and she sucked it up. And that's what, you know, that's what we do often as women, you know, not just with symptoms like this, but in life, you know, we're kind of told to suck it up. So absolutely, because then beyond family members, we go to healthcare providers, pediatricians. You know, I didn't see an OB until I was 18. I didn't see a gynecologist until I was 18. And I think that's common, you know, for adolescents. Usually we get, you know, we see school nurses in the US or pediatricians or primary care physician. And oftentimes they are not looking for something like endometriosis, or they think it's normal, you know, to have. I was told that. I was told that it was part of being a woman. I was told that I needed to, deal with it. I was told that my favorite, or not favorite, was that I was trying to get attention. And I remember being so confused because I remember thinking, well, I know how to get attention. I'm a teenager, and I would not choose this as a means to getting attention. And now, we have a term to that. It's called gaslighting,
Yes.
but as a teenager, I mean, I didn't know what it was. I didn't have a word to put to it. I didn't have that. I think it's empowering, to know, okay, well, that's what it is. I can actually say, this is the word that is happening to me. But when you don't have that vocabulary, and you feel already like, as a young person, this feeling of being disempowered, it's quite confusing, to be told by adults in your life that what you're feeling is not real or being minimized in that way.
It was really fascinating to see, because I didn't know much about endometriosis. My sister, my mom, we haven't had, we've never suffered from it. And luckily, and maybe we did, or, maybe it's hidden. I almost think of this as like a hidden disease. Maybe my sister, I know she went through a lot of pain and cramping growing up, and did she have some form of it? Like, we don't even know. That's why I feel like it's such a hidden kind of a disease.
Yeah.
And I love that you have brought it to people's attention. And can you give us some insight into the research of endometriosis, like where we were before, where we are now compared to the past, and what it means for the patient population? How can we better serve them with this research?
Yes. Well, I mean, women's health conditions have historically been under researched, undervalued just in this country. It's not completely, just endometriosis. I mean, we don't know the answers because no one's looked for them. There hasn't been the funding to look for them. I do think it's changing, obviously with the new White House Women's Health Initiative, where they're really looking at how do we have transformative amounts of research funding for women's health conditions, or conditions that affect women differently, or conditions that we see that more women have them, like autoimmune diseases and things like that. And female specific diseases, traditionally like endometriosis, PCOS, fibroids. So I do think it's changing. And to your point just then about how maybe with your sister or you, there was a new research that McKinsey released publicly in Davos last week, saying that 40% of people say only 40% of cases with endometriosis we think are actually diagnosed. So we're looking at 60% of cases of people with endometriosis that are not actually ever diagnosed.
That is crazy.
Yeah, what does that mean? I mean, we know that it's 1 in 10, but, I will say a lot of experts that I've talked to in research, they unofficially and anecdotally think it's more like 1 in 4. Wow. Of course, there's varying degrees of symptoms, and some people present with really intense symptoms that are completely debilitating. Some people have progressively worse symptoms over, their lifespan, whereas some don't, and some maybe don't even know they have endometriosis until they experience infertility. So why does it present that way? We don't know, because the research hasn't been there. What can we do about it? We don't know, because the research hasn't been there. But we are working with policymakers in Washington, as well as working with policy with the WEF just announced a global alliance for women's health and named endometriosis specifically, to put we need funding, to find the answers. So I don't know. I'll just say let's talk in a couple of years, and hopefully I'll have some better answers for you.
I mean, clearly we need a systemic change here, and I wonder what people, like regular people, everyday people like us, what we can do to support the cause, and also how can we support someone we know suffering from endometriosis in their daily lives, like what kind of emotional support we can show them, and also what we can do in terms of bringing about a wider change. People who are here in this chat group, people who watch your movies, how can we help?
Yeah, thank you. Well, you're already doing it, first of all, by providing a platform to screen the film and to have this discussion. I mean, that's a key first step. Share, talk about the film with other people in your lives. It doesn't have to just be the women in your life, but, the men in your life, because everyone knows and loves someone with endometriosis. I say that. You may not think that you do, but it's just too pervasive. You absolutely do. So please talk about it. Talk about conditions that, are not normally discussed publicly, because that's the only way we can take away this taboo and take away the long delayed diagnosis and empower, and educate, the women and girls in your lives to find answers if they have symptoms of different conditions, because that's the only way we can move all of us forward.
No, that is great. And the people that you featured in your movie, it was so touching to see how the dad or the spouse or how a mom, like they're just trying to be there. And you can see those individuals suffering alongside of the patient themselves, because it kind of overtakes any disease in a family can really overtake everybody in terms of the suffering. It's hard for the carer as well as much as it is for the patient. So it was fascinating, but I also loved how you ended the movie on an optimistic note, and things look better for all those patients who've gone through so much suffering. That was beautiful. I do have two more questions for you. They're kind of related to what we've already been talking about, but lack of funding and research in treatment is the focus of your film. And can you tell us how important the role of storytelling is in campaigning for a change and getting more funds, both for research and for treatment?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I actually spoke at a panel last week and we talked exactly about this. Like, data and statistics provide information. They're important. Absolutely. We need the data. We need this information to move forward in an informed way. However, storytelling provides meaning and emotion to those statistics. The fact is that we are all inundated by information every day. There are so many things to be outraged about, and and they're all valid, there's just so many things. So how do we communicate about an issue, whatever the issue is, and break through that noise in a meaningful way to actually move progress forward in a meaningful way? There are a number of ways to do that, but I think that we're seeing storytelling as this kind of device move forward, because we're all human. We all tell stories. We all resonate with stories. You can share a statistic about that 200 million people are affected, or you can share a story about stories of 4 different people and their true lived experience. Chances are that people who are confronted with both, they're going to remember the story. They're going to remember Laura's dad, who's so emotional, with her. They're going to remember Emily, who's a teenager, and is going through these types of really confusing symptoms from this very disempowered position, as far as just not being believed or wanting to be normal, quote unquote. It just helps move it forward. There are a lot of studies that show that facts given within a dramatic arc, given within a story, are remembered more readily by people who I can't speak English today. I'm like,
No,
what
you're
are the
doing
words?
great. This is awesome.
No, but it's coming. But I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I need to. My body's like, what time is it? But sorry. So basically, research does show that facts that are conveyed within a story, or specifically within a dramatic arc, a story that has a dramatic arc, a real beginning, middle, and end. People remember those facts more readily than just facts given without any type of storytelling context. So I think it's really interesting, and I think that we can all learn to do that in our lives, whatever you feel passionate about, whatever issues and causes that you're working within. I would say consider storytelling as a device to move those issues forward, to move those causes forward. And I think that you may, find some interesting information there as you do that.
Thanks, Shannon. And then kind of to wrap what we've been talking about, I know we've touched on this in our conversation just now, and you were saying conditions that, affect women tend to garner less funding and research. And we've seen this in multiple areas in all kinds of research, whether it's health related or not. But how can an increase in funding improve health outcomes for women with endometriosis and other related conditions? I mean, how can this come about?
Yeah, well, I mean, increased research funding obviously will help us find the answers that we need. I mean, it will help find the answers to what actually causes endometriosis and answer things like, why does it present differently in different people? And then, beyond that, then what treatments work best for different types of, symptoms. It's probably, right now it's everything, all the treatments are kind of like sledgehammers. Surgery does help a lot of people, but not everyone, and not forever. And we need to know why. Certainly medications that are out there right now, they're just being employed across the board, a lot of hormonal treatments, and without any real specialized kind of consideration of symptoms. And we need to know, why some medications work better than others, and only with like I said, a transformative amount of research funding for endometriosis and associated conditions are we going to find those answers. Historically, it hasn't been a focus, or it hasn't been what anyone thinks. The political will hasn't been there, we'll say, but that's changing, and it changes by people talking about it, and providing platforms like this, and by people saying, enough's enough. Like, we need to have answers for women, so that we can have fulfilling lives and professional lives, personal lives, and have all of the things that we deserve and we want.
And thank you for bringing about that change through your storytelling and, hard work, your advocacy on this issue. I mean, it is fascinating to me, and I'm sure everybody here, that 200 million people, I mean, 1 in 10, as your movie tells us, and such little research on this topic for so long. I mean, this is 2024, and we are still trying to really learn more about this. So thank you so much for that, Shannon, for answering these questions and educating us and informing us more on this topic. And I'm going to now open the floor to questions from our attendees. And we have our questions here. Great, I have one here. Let me go with this. This is from Marissa. As a means for advocacy, the Junior League would be a great organization to educate and to present this film to members. I'm a member of the New York Junior League and would be happy to facilitate a connection. The gender health gap is relevant to our membership and respective communities. Leah's asking, I guess that was a comment from Marissa. Leah's asking, have you seen any progress since your first movie from 2016, Endo What?
Yeah, well, first to Marissa, please get in touch. Our website, or the email is on our website, and we have an impact team. We would love to partner. I love that idea. So absolutely. Second, yes, of course, I have seen a change in widespread awareness. It's not just due to the films, but I do think the films are driving conversation and creating momentum around, the condition in a meaningful way. Below the Belt screened, it premiered on PBS in June of last year, and it's continued, and it had 100% pickup in PBS's largest markets. So, I mean, millions of people have seen it now. People unwittingly just turning on or looking on the PBS app and finding something and watching it, and maybe had never considered, the disease or any of the how it may affect them. And I think there's a great power in that. Yeah, we have been working on Capitol Hill since 2017 in a bipartisan way. And that work continues with Senator Warren and Senator Mitt Romney, and will continue even after Senator Romney retires later this year. So, I mean, I'm excited to see, change on the policy level and seeing a greater recognition of the importance of the disease in DC and around the world. And the White House, for example, the White House Gender Policy Council is doing substantive work within, pushing this disease forward, or research for this disease forward, and a lot of other associated conditions. I don't think any of this was there years ago. And I think that we're seeing a huge groundswell of people being insistent, mainly women, and the people who love us who have maybe these conditions, a real public outcry. I can feel the momentum changing, not just for endometriosis, but people who, why do, heart attack symptoms present differently in women? We need to know those answers. Why are 80% of autoimmune conditions present in women? We need to know these answers. And the more we talk about it, the more we demand it, and the more people hear that, the more quickly we're going to get there to these answers. I have great faith that it's coming, but we can't stop now.
Absolutely. Our Vice President Barbara has a question. What is being done to improve medical education so that healthcare providers can more quickly diagnose endometriosis? Also, has there been an effort to qualify endometriosis as a disability so that people who have the condition can request reasonable accommodations from their employers?
Yeah, great questions, Barbara. So the first is, we have a school nurse initiative. We've educated about 10,000 school nurses in the US about endometriosis and menstrual health. And that's been incredibly effective so far. We will continue that program until we educate every school nurse. Beyond that, we are working with Mayo Clinic and Harvard Medical School actually to develop CME, continuing education for healthcare providers, with a new campaign this year. And our focus is frontline providers like nurse practitioners, family medicine doctors, primary care physicians, pediatricians. So the idea being that they watch below the belt, they receive a couple of different short lectures from one specialist at Harvard, one at Mayo Clinic, and then as a realist and pragmatist, I want to offer something of value to them, so they get continuing education credits for reviewing everything. So that will be announced later this year.
Wow.
So we also have a medical school screening tour where we've screened at 12 medical schools over the past year, a little bit more than a year, so that we can educate, medical students, regardless of what specialty they go into. They understand about endometriosis and the hurdles that women in general face to getting, effective and early diagnosis to conditions that maybe, every place we've screened it so far, I've seen the look on medical students' faces. They just didn't know. And they feel really invigorated and engaged after. So I've seen great success with this screening tour. I love screening at medical schools and at universities because the students are just super engaged and passionate about bringing about change.
And Aarti's asking, how can we have this movie in different languages to spread awareness in emerging markets, in other countries outside US?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot that I didn't answer the second part of Barbara's question. So with
disability, yes.
Yes, with disability. So we have started that discussion in DC with, basically it's a regulatory issue and trying to get endometriosis added to, the ADA. It's definitely a whole thing. And we've been told, well, it's a case-by-case basis. You should be able to just, it should be under the act. But it is a lot more complicated if you're not a named condition. It is on our radar, and we are trying to work, within the paradigm that's set forth, and going outside of that paradigm too, to try to get endometriosis and associated conditions added. Just know that we are working on it. We know that it's important, and it's not going to be accomplished just by one person or one group. It's going to take, several of us. As far as different languages, we are working to do that. I think Below the Belt's in 7 or 8 different languages right now. And we are working with international distributors at the moment to get this film in every country, on television, on streaming platforms. It takes a little bit of time, but I hope by the end of this year, it'll be widely available in meaningful way across different platforms and in every region on the planet.
Yeah, that would be wonderful if it's easily accessible everywhere and to spread the awareness. I have another question here from Arian. Are there any efforts underway for insurance companies to recognize endometriosis so that the treatment can be covered? I guess the surgery part and things like that.
I mean, yes. I mean, we're working on all of these things. I mean, yes, there are, but that's a challenge. Insurance, as if any of you have dealt with insurance companies, they're their own challenge, It will help the more research we get. But the reason why is because so many of them are saying, oh, well, that's not this treatment A isn't, we need more research, justifying this, or treatment B, we need more research, so I've heard that so many times. We need more research. We need more research. And we can't have more research without the funding. So it all comes back to research and getting that funding, because if we can get these studies funded, then we have, the data to justify treatment A versus treatment B. And then it's just an easier task to have that data, to have that research when we go to insurance companies, because right now they're just kind of in a stalemate where they're saying, no, I mean, why should we treat this? And it's really up to the patient to advocate. And what a burden for a patient. You're asking someone who's going through with a chronic, condition, who's ill, to fight for this. There are advocates who have taken it upon themselves to guide patients, through this process. And that's what I suggest right now, until we can get this huge, the policy changes. And like I said, we have to get the research one step at a time.
And we have a question saying, you showed Orrin Hatch and Elizabeth Warren and Mitt Romney as political partners. Who are the current champions in our government for more funding? And related to that is Barbara's follow-up question. And has there been an effort to engage Congress people from Gen Z to support this initiative?
Yeah, I mean, that the main champions right now are Elizabeth Warren, Mitt Romney. We are working hard in the Senate to bring on more partners. And this year we'll be announcing more partners with that. On the House side, there are Nikema Williams. She's a Democrat congresswoman from Georgia. She's spoken about having endometriosis. She's been a champion. And there are others on the House side, yes, who are younger House leaders. And I mean, we'll see. Like, we're working on it right now, and there is a 31 member bipartisan House endometriosis caucus, for example. So people from both sides of the aisle pushing forward this issue in a meaningful way, trying to get increased research funding from the NIH to continue the DoD funding that you see in the film started by Senator Warren and Senator Hatch. It is an interesting time politically in this country to try to ask for increased research funding for any condition. And we're tracking it. We'll see what happens with the next election, in the next couple of years. But I have hope that we will see, this dramatically increased research funding happen for all of conditions that affect women. So to be continued.
We have another question. Is endometriosis just as prevalent in other countries as it is in the United States? And which country is leading the way currently in the research in this area?
Endometriosis is an equal opportunity disease. It affects everyone, regardless of, or we don't have the data if it affects people differently. As of right now, it looks to affect everyone, regardless of race, nationality, socioeconomic status. you are, you have this percentage to have it wherever you are on the planet. And which countries are leading the way? Australia has a national action plan for endometriosis. I think they're being, quite frankly, the leaders in this. France has, President Macron has spoken, recently about how endometriosis is a priority in the French government. England is leading the way. The US has been falling behind recently. We're trying to catch up. I mean, there are a lot of advocates and organizations really pushing, forward. But I quote the Australian National Action Plan often. There are a lot of similarities and a lot that we can learn from the advocates before us, and not just in endometriosis, but I think all of us can learn. We got the idea to do the DoD funding for endometriosis from breast cancer advocates, there's so much we can learn from people who've come before us, who've walked this path before us, and whatever, in endometriosis, but in women's health, but so much more beyond that. And I encourage all of us to learn from those, to add from it. I always say, listen, you can copy whatever I've done if it moves the conversation forward, add to it. We're here, collectively, we're all rowing in the same direction. We have also learned quite a bit from ACT UP, the HIV and AIDS movement in the 80s and 90s. I've talked to advocates. Greg Gonzalez, who runs the Global Health Policy Institute at Yale, he's been incredibly generous and gracious with me, with his time and ideas. He was part of the ground, the first movement from ACT UP, for HIV and AIDS research. So learn from those who've come before us, add to that. And there's a lot of great value in that.
I mean, in the film, I saw there were a lot of snippets of information from research done in Australia. I remember looking at that, and there was a question regarding it. Can you share some details of the Australian action plan?
I mean, Google it. I'm not an expert on it by any means, but I mean, it's readily available online. And I mean, it just really, first of all, the Australian government has given millions of dollars. They've allocated millions of dollars specifically to endometriosis and to endometriosis research, to frontline providers, educational programs, to a lot of different aspects of the, how we approach, health conditions, and how do we change with widespread awareness, with medical education, with research, things that we're doing here in the US and abroad. But specifics, I'm not able to share that, at least not today.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely
maybe another day when I haven't been traveling constantly.
No, that's fair. That's totally fine. We are actually, an idea has come up, and I think might be helpful for your team as well, and just to bring about more research. Looking at the comments in the chat about people's experiences, it seems like a questionnaire could be created about the shared and common symptoms that could be used as a diagnostic tool that would facilitate detection.
Okay, so I will say, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Clue. It's an app that it's like a menstrual health tracker. They have just announced, like, we're partnering with them on a couple of events this year, but they have just announced a symptom tracker for endometriosis. They have 6 million active users around the world. So I would say that is happening in a huge way. So we're talking about 6 million menstruators right now that they're encouraging to track symptoms, so that hopefully in the next year or two, they have meaningful data on a large scale to share. I love that idea. Obviously, people are on it who are well situated to do it. So whoever shared that comment, like, you're definitely, you're on the right track with what needs to happen. And we have some really well positioned people poised to execute it, hopefully in the next year.
Well, that idea came from our president, Leah.
Okay, good idea, Leah.
There is a question from Laura. As the awareness spreads, the problem of there being very few skilled surgeons emerges. How can that be dealt with so poorly done ablation surgeries isn't the result?
I think it takes with, education, of course, the research to, to back up different types of surgery and why maybe excision is better for so many more people. We need the research there. And then there is, I think, in the US and around the world, there a reluctance to refer to specialists. And what we're really trying to encourage right now is for generalists not to try to treat endometriosis. It really needs to be endometriosis, especially, debilitating endometriosis, need to be treated by a specialist. And if we can keep that language and encourage that language in the medical community, I hope that we'll see, that shift happening. But until we see that shift, I think that most OBGYNs and general surgeons are going to try to treat this disease. And the fact of the matter is they don't have the requisite skill and training to treat it or recognize it. A lot of people don't realize that endometriosis has different appearances. It can be, a lot of medical school textbooks say that it's black. But actually it can be red, blue, clear, white, fibrotic tissue. And most people don't know that. And these are people taking patients to an OR. So how can we encourage them to refer to specialists? That's the goal.
We have a question from Lena. Can you go through the steps you took and the timeline to get the film made? From having the idea to pitching to partners to funding, shooting, distribution, etc. So I guess more about the filmmaking process.
I mean, it was a long process for sure. This film is 10 years in the making. It's a passion project of mine. When I was working on other projects, I would be, if I were in, Los Angeles and I, wanted to talk to an expert there and I was on a different project, I would, also film, this movie while I was there. As you can see from the film, a lot of the material is done from, film from the patients themselves or their caregivers. And that was not only a creative choice, because I think it, really provides intimacy and really brings the viewer into their lives in this very familiar and personal way, but also because of budget. I mean, it just made sense. I had to ask, I couldn't be there for every test, So a lot of times they filmed, their lives, but that's, with the way things are, now online, it's just part of how we relate to other people. I mean, so that's been very helpful. How we work with partners is reaching out to people and just not being shy there at all and saying, we have a common mission. Can we partner in different ways? And that's how we've done it. It's been a process for sure, but like anything where it's personal and meaningful and you feel passionate about it, you keep going. You see the brick walls, but you find a way around them. And that's what we've done for a decade. So, and we still confront them. I have to justify why I made movies about endometriosis all the time, like why I would spend my time on something that seems like I've been told so many times, oh, this niche condition. I'm so tired of hearing the word niche when they talk about endometriosis. And I'm like, this is arguably the most common devastating disease on the planet. You just don't know about it, So it's been a journey, and it continues to be, but I think it's important. I think it's meaningful for everyone, whether they have it or love someone who does. So I would encourage any of you who are passionate about something that maybe other people don't see the value, to keep pushing and to keep communicating in a real and authentic way, an informed way about why it's important, and people will start to listen.
Wow. And what kind of a crew did you have that takes, I mean, how many people do you require to put it together, bring your film together?
Not very many.
The credit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, the credits, we laugh about that a lot, because I'll see, these big, huge Hollywood movies, and I'm like, and the credits last for like 7 minutes. And I'm like, wow, wouldn't that be amazing to have all of those people working on your film? That would be amazing.
Yeah.
We have credits, of course, and we have a team, but that's 10 years, and there are a lot of interns and production assistants and people who feel passionately about this. So It takes a village. That's all I've got to say. And a lot of people care about this condition, and a lot of people care about putting accurate information and real information out there that, you know, it shows the authentic lived experience of others and believe in the film. So we've been fortunate to work with them.
Thank you so much, Shannon. This has been so amazing. It's been great talking to you. We love the work you've done. The movie is incredible. And I think right now I'd love to open the discussion, have people, you know, ask questions or comment or talk about their symptoms with you, if that's okay. And
yes, I have about 2 minutes, but
okay.
but I'm happy to continue over email.
Sure.
Feel free, but yes.
Let me hand it over to Aarti then. And Aarti, if you want to take it from here.
Sure.
Thanks, Elisa.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Elisa. As we draw this remarkable session to a close, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for your active participation and insightful questions. But most importantly, I wish to extend a special thank you to Shannon. Shannon, your courage in sharing your experiences has been nothing short of inspiring. You know, your ability to articulate the complexities and nuances of such a sensitive and vital subject has left a mark on all of us. I think the movie is a testament to your skill as a filmmaker, but you sharing all the processes and what went behind it today was truly, truly amazing. You rightly pointed out that this movie is much more than a narrative about a health condition. It is a powerful commentary on gender parity and access to healthcare, themes that resonate deeply in today's society. As we conclude, I hope that the insights and ideas exchanged here will continue to resonate with all of us and inspire actions in our respective fields. I would like to extend a special thanks to Elisa, who so wonderfully brought forward such pertinent questions, which really added such a richness to this discussion today. A huge thank you to the GlobalWE board for helping with the planning of this event and all of you who participated and shared your experiences. Thank you, everyone, for your invaluable contribution and to everyone for making this event a meaningful one. If you have a suggestion for our next movie club movie, or if you know of a filmmaker focused on women's issues who might want to be featured in our next movie club event, please send us an email. I'm going to put the email address in the chat box. If you would like to lead the discussion for that event, you're more than welcome to do that. In addition, we would like to invite you to join us for our next event scheduled February 10th. It's a discussion circle, and the topic is sexual violence as a weapon for war. You will be getting an email to register for this. We are looking for globally focused events. So if there is a women's empowerment topic speaker you are passionate about and you would like to plan an event around it, please connect with us by sending us an email to programs@harvardglobalwe.org. Hope you enjoyed all the program today. Thanks once again, Shannon, for joining us today. It was such an enriching discussion. Stay safe and have a good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.